I'm Brandon Miller, and you are listening to Coach. This weekly series dives deep into the world of Clifton strengths and how they impact your daily life. Hear from certified strengths coaches on the ins and outs, quirks, and characteristics of all 34 strengths and 4 domains and how they play out in real life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. I'm here today with Dan Schaal, and we are talking about the strength of consistency. Dan comes to us from Philadelphia, and if you're watching on video, you would know that because we are days ahead of the Super Bowl, and Dan is ready to go Birds. Dan, welcome to the show.
Dude, Brandon, thank you so much. Yeah, we are, hopefully by the time this is out there, I'm celebrating Super Bowl 59 win. We are celebrating.
Yes,
that.
we share in common our mutual affinity for the Birds. Me, all the way in California. Dan comes by birth, probably.
I was born green.
Born green, yeah. So we share that. But that's about what we're going to end on what we share today, because this strength that we're going to talk about, consistency, Dan and I talking before the show, I said, this is the one of all 34 that I have the least natural affinity to, the least understanding. It's one of those, if you were to measure me on a scale of whether it's a strength or a weakness, it's one, if I were to try to do what Dan does on his own, I would probably measure about a D+, maybe a C- on my very best day. And so I learned a cool coaching technique I told Dan about at the beginning, which is called blind spot curiosity. And what that is when you know that something literally sits back in your blind spot, you don't naturally feel it, you don't relate to it, you don't think that way, it helps to inquire of someone who does. And so with this one, Dan, you're going to be taking the lead on consistency today, and welcome, and let's dive right in. You have consistency. Which number? How do you use it? How do you define it? Let's just start right in there.
So consistency is number 3 in my report. But it's the highest, executing theme. So it really guides the way that I get stuff done, how I take action and accomplish what I want to accomplish. When you first get the report back and you see the results and you look at the words and I'm like, what does consistency mean? And I'm not consistent in like my discipline. I got those confused. Discipline's a little lower, but the more I read about it, the more it made sense. To me, it's that's not fair strength. The middle school, I teach middle school is my day job, coach by night. So middle school right now, that's not fair. And so I had that's not fair strength all of my life. And I always look back fondly about, when I saw the report, it made total sense that this is who I was all of my life, about equity, justice, fairness, making sure everybody was equal, everyone was treated the same way. And when it's not, it really, really gets under my skin when I see people not treated fairly. And it needs to be fair for me to be happy.
I so appreciate you starting right off with fairness, because early on, Gallup did call this strength fairness. So that was the initial way it was described. Consistency came later. I think consistency made it a little more broad. It gave it a little more dimension because of those areas you covered, equity, justice. But at its core, this strength does measure. It does look at how things shape and how people are treated. And from my experience, I found that people really high in this strength naturally are guardians of others. They take up for others that are on the short end of the stick. That if they perceive, hey, this is not right, we need to balance this back up. Would that be accurate from your experience?
Absolutely. The thing that, as an adult, my job as a teacher and also as a coach of students in sports, but also now as a coach in strengths, I want everyone to have equal time to speak, equal time to be seen, equal time to be heard. If I'm in a group dynamic, I don't want someone to dominate the microphone or dominate the time that we have, Q&A opportunities or things of that nature. And I make sure I allow each person the opportunity to speak. They may not want to speak, and that they can choose not to contribute. That is just fine. That is their choice. But I will not be the dictator of, you don't get to talk today because I say so. Everyone will have the chance to speak, and then they can choose which direction they take. But I think it's important that in this world, we should recognize people should be seen. People should be given the opportunity to share, to contribute, to partake in any activity. I do feel like I'm the guardian of that. I sometimes have to put my the consistency police hat on, and then sometimes I go, wait, you need to stop a little bit because you're getting a little too far with this. The dynamic can get a little skewed, and I kind of take too much power in that role. But I have to sometimes check myself a little bit and let things naturally unfold.
I like that. Self-regulating your strength, being aware of when it's the right mixture. It's not too much, not being left off, but it's getting the right use at the right time.
Well, that happens from the way that I coach. I find it very valuable that all of my clients depend on the report first. I am only the guide that helps to clarify, to help, interpret, to help redirect and give advice to them based on the report. I will not be there for them all the time. And then I really try to teach them how to use the blind spots of the report. And that is one of the blind spots. I see myself as, in the words, is the guardian of what is right. And so I need to step back sometimes and not take that role and, make sure other people can think for themselves and stand up for themselves, because I'm not always going to be there. So I have to sometimes step back and allow them to do it on their own.
We've been talking a lot in season 2 about the strength of the strength, and something I've noted with consistency is the strength to set up the systems to ensure future fairness. So consistency has this ability to see what's out of balance in the moment and put together things to make it stick in the future. And it has that planning ability to say, well, let's now set up the rule, the policy, the procedure that ensures that we're creating an equitable situation for others.
And that's so true. Part of every opportunity I get to start anew, whether it is a new school year, whether it is a new group, a new client that I am now taking from the very beginning of their journey, I use the previous experience to reset, to say, okay, this did not work the last time, and I wasn't clear in the rules or the procedures. And so I am now going to tweak it. I'm now going to make sure that I modify it so everybody has a fair chance, so that all of my students are getting the opportunity to be seen. And it is a refinement. It can't be just the one time you go through things. So I have to consistently, use that word there, consistently reevaluate all of my procedures so that they suit everybody, not just a specific demographic.
That's great. Dan Schaal is able to be found at www.danschaal.com. And Dan, tell us about what you're up to. You mentioned you're doing relationship coaching, and sounds like parenting is a big emphasis. For our listeners' benefit, tell us what you're up to.
I started this coaching journey through a company, a network marketing company was suggesting people take it. My wife was part of it. I took the assessment. I thought, wow, this is pretty cool, whatever. But once I got the results and I dove in a little bit and did a little research, I realized this is incredible. The information that I gained, the insight about me, and it wasn't professionally, it was more personally. It was the interactions with my wife. I saw her report and my report, and then it made sense. Things made sense. The weird things she does and the why she does things and the things that I do. And we had a pretty good laugh about, oh, now you make sense because you were I didn't understand why you did what you did. Had our children take it, they were teenagers, and it made sense about, oh my gosh, this is the reason you're doing what you're doing. And I found that once we all discovered this little hidden secret about ourselves and brought these things to light, it made it easier to communicate. It made it easier for us to understand each other. And I could say, now I know why you're doing what you're doing. And let me tell you why I do what I do. Let me communicate and share, this is the way Dad is. So when Dad does something, this is the reason why. And as I began to coach others and kind of dip my toe in that water, I found it really enlightening when people hadn't shared this information with their significant others or their kids, or put it on a shelf and just kind of hid it away as some kind of novelty. And it's not about being judged. I think that the people listening to this call know that when we get our report back and we get our assessment completed, we're not judging you. We're just discovering you in a different way, with different language, with different tips to be the best version of yourself. So what I tried to do is help people communicate what they've learned about themselves in a way that the other people around them will not be offended by their actions, setting the rules. This is where the consistency comes in. Have you ever played a game when there's no rules and someone keeps changing them? And as the game goes on, the rules change. That really can get under my skin. That really makes me uncomfortable. Or my father, he was a great man. I love my dad to death. But when he would come home from work, I didn't know which dad I was getting. I didn't know which father was going to come home. The one that was irritated from a long day of work, or the loving, caring, cuddling father. I had both sides. And I didn't like the way that made me feel. So he never shared his feelings with us or anything about himself. So I thought, if I could help people, even adults, share with their children why they feel the way they feel, why they do what they do. And those strengths are a humongous tool that really it's everywhere. The strengths don't just reveal themselves at work. They reveal themselves in every single facet of our lives. And I thought, if I can help people understand that relationally, we could have better domestic lives, parent to child, spouse to spouse. And that's where I kind of have my focus with people. I've worked with school districts on helping parents understand this dynamic and what their role as parents with these strengths, and how they can communicate with their kids, and how having kids take the young version. I just lost it in my head here.
Strengths Explorer.
Explorer. I was going to call it Challenger, Strengths Explorer, and getting them involved in that at a young age. You can have them, fill them with potential and understanding, empowerment of your children. Really, at a young age, can help them become better human beings in this world.
I love that. So you mentioned that you're working with small groups, working with individuals. You do have a Facebook group that people could find you at.
Yes, it's called Thriving Relationships Community on Facebook. It's a community where I try to, give daily tips, daily advice through strengths, through, little tidbits of information, just to get people thinking, get conversation going, offering, little snippets of videos explaining what they mean and how we can use them in every facet of our lives, even down to just getting your child to bed. What's a good thing to get your child to go to sleep, and how your strength will help them go to bed or get ready for school or get the homework done. Little things like that. You can use your strengths in all those areas.
That's good. So I'm going to ask you two questions. I want to ask from one side, since this is the coach to coach season, how does one coach with consistency? How does that support your coaching? How does it make it more effective? And then I want to turn that around and ask how you coach consistency to be at its best. Because in both cases, as we describe what you might do as an expert, one who is using this tool, you're using it inside of school districts with families, you're being entrusted with parents, marriage, family. That's a sacred place you're being invited into. And so the strength must be serving well, because if you're being invited back and people are investing in this, you obviously are having success. So talk to us first about coaching with consistency. How does that work for you? How does that come through? How does that, we'll call it your coaching power, come through with consistency?
The first thing I try to do when I'm with a group or individual or any type of environment I'm coaching is set those rules right away, or the procedures right away off the bat. What should you expect from me? I want everyone to understand exactly what they're going to get in that time frame, whether it be the hour call that we're doing, or the hour and a half webinar we're doing, or just over the length or the duration of our coaching arrangement, what that's going to look like. I'm not a big fan of surprises. And so I think it's important for everyone that I work with that this is what it's going to look like over the next blank period of time. And that can help. In my mind, it just helps me know, keeps me on track. That's one thing.
I got to tell you, Dan, that is an incredible advantage, because I think every coach would say that's a really important part of being an effective coach, is making sure people know what's coming. And I think that's an advantage that someone with consistency has, is that you have the ability, because of that strength, to define it so well and probably stick to it. You're probably good at saying, and I'm very curious about that, because as I said at the start of the show, I don't share this, but that is a, if you remember that exercise, love, crazy, envy.
Yes.
Which strength do you envy? you're giving me envy right now because that consistency, and I'm now jumping to, wow, classroom, expectations, sports expectations. How about managers and expectations? So this strength brings a powerful advantage in that that's what you do naturally, is you need to do that for your sake and the one that you're working with.
Again, I think we take our experiences and we look at how life has impacted us as a coach and how I felt uncomfortable with people, with bosses, with coaches that I've had that were not organized in that way. They were not predictable. It was a guess every day, and I didn't like the way it made me feel. I was uncomfortable not knowing what was going to happen that day. And this just gives me a sense of peace and a calm. I have a current client right now who is moving at a different pace than I would, everybody's journey is different, but it's not the way that is typically going. And I'm kind of like, my consistency is being tweaked a little bit because I'm having to think on the fly a little bit, right? It's kind of messing with me a little bit because I'm not sure what to get from this person, right? And they're not playing the way I want them to play. But it's fine because it's teaching me lessons. I'm learning to grow from that experience. I do believe it helps them too.
I have to pause on, people are definitely unpredictable.
Yes.
Humans are so unpredictable. And so I had wondered if that was going to come through in this conversation around, how does one who thrives in predictability, thrives with expectations, clear lines, clear paths, when you're faced with the inevitability of just the human messiness, because we're all so messy. And I imagine your consistency has some way I almost imagine like you're corralling them back to someplace.
My consistency isn't just one path. It's not just we have this one lane on the highway. That's it. It's just the one lane. It's a 6-lane highway. You might pass over here. You might go to the right or left, but we're getting to the same spot. And I'm going to keep you in the lane, so to speak, but I'm not going to let you go off the off ramp, or you're not changing direction on me completely. And consistency, again, we can't speak of other strengths, but consistency to the straight the straight line consistency, you have to be a little bit flexible. But it's to the point for me, I can't be so rigid where anybody that goes off makes my life spiral or makes my coaching spiral or my teaching spiral. I have a little bit of leeway, a little bit of give, a little to keep people still moving in the right direction.
That's good. Does consistency help you track progress? Does it have a part in that you can see how people are progressing?
I do. It helps me that way because I'm able to, I think I know where they're supposed to be. If I've mapped out the roadmap of the rules and procedures, there's steps involved. Every procedure, there's not just one step in a procedure guide. There's multiple steps. And so I like to use the rules/procedures to keep people moving forward, using, kind of getting the right direction. And I'm able to use that as my little checklist.
I like it. Let's switch the table now. You're coaching someone with high consistency, and you can give me the range from someone new to strengths to someone who knows it, and you're helping them get the most from the strength. You probably, because this isn't a blind spot for you, it's a shared strength so that you can feel what they're feeling to an extent, think what they're thinking. You're going to have that connection point. How do you coach to get the best out of them?
I allow them to help guide I make more suggestions than statements. It's not my way. I like to allow them to kind of take control and have that power of, okay, these are the suggestions I have, knowing that they are consistent, know that they are going to have that consistency high. And, you're taking that guess, you're taking that chance that they're going to want to have the rules and procedures and the steps the way that I use them. I allow them to make those decisions. Okay, what direction you want to take next? How's this going to look in your eyes? What are your norms of this conversation? I'll give you what I want to do and how I operate. How do you operate? To give them some power and some control over their consistency so they feel that they have that fairness, they've been heard, that they can kind of rise up and be like, okay, now I'm feeling that you're listening to me, that I'm getting the opportunity to speak my truth, so to speak, and I can kind of guide my own journey, and I'm not the one totally in control. Little reverse psychology type of thing, where I give them the opportunity to control the dynamic, but without totally giving up my control.
That's great, Dan. Thank you. danshaal.com. And if you're listening today and thinking about your family, thinking about personal relationships, this is Dan's work, his practice, where he's focused. Dan, can you think of a recent win in coaching with your clients where you've seen some progress, something that we could share from an anecdote for the listeners today of just as you're coaching in the space where you're doing your best work, some example, maybe one good anecdote here of just how it works, what it's like working with you.
I always love, I think any coach loves when a client has the aha, when their eyes open and they see something, whether they can reevaluate what their behaviors are, and they can, or they recognize something in their spouse or their child that makes them think, wow, like I never noticed that, and now I understand why. I had a couple coaching, just doing a couple, they were having some issues, and this is just last summer, but it was really interesting because they had a strength. She had it 1, he had it 32, and the strength was individualization, right? So we talked about what that strength looked like, and he was really mad about how much time and effort she took to buy gifts. And he goes, just get a gift card. It bothers me you take too long. Like, it was a little pet peeve he had, and we just had this opportunity to talk, just to talk, and he didn't understand what it meant. And so it was just, let's just talk about this, and just giving people a forum or a place where they can just understand deeper the strengths. And I'm sure this is not just something I, think about, is, there's the Gallup definition of a strength, and then there's the Webster's definition of a strength, right? They're different. We've got to make sure we keep people focused on what does Gallup intend for this to be. And consistency is one of those that's always misinterpreted. Like, what's that mean? They think doing things, the same thing over and over and over again, versus the fairness, equality, justice aspect of it. So having an opportunity for people just to sit in the report and look at what these words mean and read them, not just look at the list of 5 or 34, but let's get in there and read it. And that discovery, it was like, oh my gosh. And he looked at her. They were on a joint Zoom, and he turned and looked at her with this look of like, I am so sorry. I didn't realize just how what you were doing was in every part, every fiber of your body needed to do that. And I minimized that. I minimized your passion for this particular thing. And he said he was so remorseful for the way he made her feel for being herself. And that connection they made, because he didn't understand what it meant. It just, all the insight that was gained from those conversations make my heart swell and get so joyful when people can have that aha moment, when they can really connect.
That's incredible. What a great way for a couple to find each other. Those things that we do and what they do, and all of a sudden it's like a mist is being removed, fog is being removed, and all of a sudden it's, oh my gosh, I see you, and now I can understand you, and I can now relate accordingly. That's powerful. Friends listening today, Dan Schaal, SCHAAL.com, and you can look him up, what he's doing with relationships, also a teacher and a coach. I have to imagine consistency helps with coaching athletes in terms of training regimen, helps with staying consistent with diet. Does that come through in your coaching life? And what sport, by the way? We didn't ask what sport.
Oh, it's middle school soccer and basketball.
Very cool.
I'm teaching middle school. And there's, again, middle school, if you remember or have middle school children right now.
I just coached middle school football this last 2 years, so I very much can relate to that age group. Yes.
There's a lot of that's not fair. What is fair? And so making sure at practices we are doing the same things, they know what to expect. I have a routine that I establish right from the beginning, and I have to be very stern with that routine. This is what we're going to do each practice. These are the segments. This is how we work. My playing time schedule, my playing time rotation, who's going to play, when they're going to play, how they're going to play. I have them all. I kind of make sure that in the beginning of the season or even before the game, I tell them exactly my plan. This is the plan we're going to have today during the course of the game, so there's no surprises. And I'm fortunate that my grade that I teach, that I coach is the 7th grade teams. It is not tournament. There's no playoffs. There's no extension. So it's really developing and playing in school for the first time. So I make sure they know that there's no favorites. I don't play everyone all game long. So you got to make sure the kids know that. And I think it's important that I tell them that. There's no surprises.
I think it's a powerful use of that strength. Dan, I'm so grateful that you came to join the show today, season 2, The Strengths Whisperer. Friends, if you're listening today and you'd like to learn more about strengths, go ahead and send an email to brandon@34strong.com. We have a resource for you called How to Be a Good Teammate to Me, and we would be happy to share that with you. Again, brandon@34strong.com, and we'll make sure you get the resource, How to Be a Good Teammate to Me. Dan, we're days away from the Birds going for their Super Bowl. And I think we both can agree it's a big one. This is a rematch from 2 years ago.
And that game was tough. That was a tough one. Tough pill to swallow because we were so close. So I really hope that next time we speak, we're both cheering with our T-shirts, our Super Bowl champion T-shirts.
Very cool. Dan, thanks again for joining, friends. We'll see you next time on The Strengths Whisperer, Season 2, Coach to Coach.
Thank you for tuning in to the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. Please feel free to reach out to Brandon to partner with 34 Strong for collaboration opportunities to serve your employees or clients together. If you are a strengths coach, lead a strengths-based team, or are a fan of strength, we invite you to receive our complimentary resource, How to Be a Good Teammate to Me, Understanding My Contributions and Needs. Email Brandon_Miller at 34strong.com to connect, and he will gladly share this resource that will continue to unlock the power of strength.